So here we are with the first installment with Jits N Bits. We have good old big Shane and Riley as our co-hosts and our big guest, the man himself, Mr. Ash Williams himself. Little round of applause from our audience. Go on, Shane and Riley, join in with the applause. There we are. That's compulsory now. This is a thing. So before we start recording, we're talking about the wonderful world of training. Mr. Ashley Williams, what is going on with you now? Because obviously Wales is re-locked down. It's getting very messy.
So fortunately from the UKBJ managed to sort out elite academy status. So my academy applied for it, meaning that myself and some training partners go back to the gym. But we were kind of training anyway, so we do pro sessions every day, 4 days a week for about 3 hours a day. I think the busiest one this week was maybe 15 people. They did not all have elite athlete status either, so but it's okay. I just feel like everyone is doing stuff and everyone's probably gonna lie about it, but I'd rather just straight be honest and say that we're training. It's very demoralizing to watch my fellow competitors in the US competing every weekend. They're obviously training flat out as well, and I'll probably get knocked out of the rankings before I get a match this year, so it's not ideal. So I have to train because as soon as we open back up, I'll be significantly behind our American, the Americans in the rankings and just competitively in the world. And I don't want to go back on the stage and fight. I got guys like Ethan Krallenstein calling me out for my Polaris title. Just like commenting saying like, "Oh, it's a match I'd love." And
that match is unreal.
And I had to train hard for that last match, it's no joke, and it was a tough match. And I'm not really going to be like, yeah, no stress, man. And Ethan's been killing it lately. He's been winning match after match after match. I think he took on 5 guys. I think it was 2 nights ago. He did like, what's the quintet? He did a quintet and he took out one full team by himself, just tapped 5 guys in a row. So, if I get offered a match with Ethan in 2 weeks, I'd be like, what? Like the guy's been training for months.
You say that, but last one, how long were you off before you had your match? You were injured for how long? And then you sort of just come back off of
it was actually my first match back for like 9 months. I was in a cast for like 7 months. I trained for like 4 weeks or so, but I was at least like I was in and off training in the cast, out of the cast, and but Ethan's looking in really good form right now. So it's just I just think we got to train. At the end of the day, it's my livelihood. My gym suffered enough as it is. I run a gym, and we've been shut for 6 months. We've lost over half our students. So at least training's keeping me sane.
Especially when it comes to having these sort of, because Chris Rees Academy, are there any other Chris Rees Academies anywhere else in the Wales at all?
Yeah, so we got a couple of affiliates. We got one in Bridgend, Portdowie, Pembrokeshire, Carmarthen. We were up to about 9 at one point, and a couple of guys split off to do their own thing. But I always think the same, unfortunately no academy is kind of the same as your own academy, it's like having Gracie Barra. Gracie Barra schools are all over the place. And I think if you went to Gracie Barra in the States and went to Homro school, it's not really going to be the same as going to one of the Gracie Barras, maybe in like Nottingham. The quality and the people who are on the mats is different level. So I kind of just gone for the approach this year that the main focus is just the academy I run. And we're very happy with how we're going on. We just literally released a video now of the work we've done during the lockdown. We did some renovating, expanded our matted area, put a weights section in, and just improved a few areas, So happy with that, but it's just nice to be able to train again. But I'm so man, we're training hard.
I mean, this is always, there's so much to go into with this. And something you highlighted there just a minute ago was about Nottingham area of all things. Now, do you think there's any talent in the Nottingham scene? I can think of a couple of Nottingham grapplers. Some in the chat, I can imagine.
Yeah, but Oliver Lavelle is Oliver Lavelle from that way? I think he is he?
Maybe. He was. I think he might have moved.
Because
sure.
he is legit, man. He's a killer. I think is that where Victor's gym is, Nottingham?
Yeah. He's that's the Gracie Barra, I think.
I thought Victor was there. The reason I was thinking Nottingham is because I was just thinking of something like up that way that's, you know, just random in England where there's definitely was a Gracie Bar school, even though they're literally everywhere. You know, Baha got schools everywhere. But not the talent in the UK, man, is legit. It's just seriously good at across the board. You know, the guys coming through all the time. But I feel like the platform we get is a lot worse. You know, so I think it's just much harder for a UK athlete to make a name for themselves and get out there than it is for an American, really.
What about you, Shane? Can you name anyone from Nottingham who's a dominant grappler? Maybe someone with loads of tattoos and emulates Gordon Ryan quite a lot. Or what about you, Ryan? Do you know anyone from Nottingham who grapples quite a lot and recently got a win on a, sub-only show? We got a big rider, got his debut win on Empire Grappling. Yeah, pat on the back. He's done well.
Oh, nice. I actually watched Empire Grappling. I watched some of it.
Hey, look at both these boys, you know.
Who are the commentators?
Lee Herbert and Violet Bennett.
I thought they were interesting. Like some matches, I thought they were really good, and in other matches, I thought like the bias was quite weird. You know, like your match was actually quite crazy. Like literally, like did a wicked sweep pass, multi triangle, all while they were just talking about how Tyrese was a real nice guy.
Yep, whilst in a triangle. Yeah, he's great, lovely guy, but kind of
like they didn't say anything about the jiu-jitsu. I was literally watching like, what is going on? Like it seems as if they're interviewing the person or something, but they're not. They're in the match. I was like, this is absurd, you know. But that's what I think one of the problems is in the UK as well. You know, is that like just not many people want to give credit where it's due. Really, you know, like there's not much, especially outside of London. Like London's really a big hub, and then as you go further away, people care less.
You should have heard what they said afterwards. I'm pretty sure I heard Lee go, Tyrese was dominant, but he just got caught. That was not the same match I was in.
I mean, that's a pretty good description, I think.
It's pretty spot on, I feel. There's not a lot going on there, really.
Although,
no, I don't know what you're saying.
I got my ass, so I can't complain.
Well, this is it. You know, you got to support the local one, not those Welsh people. You know, have Wales got any grapplers? You think? Do you reckon?
Nah.
No, I think Ross Nichols. He's all right.
Only me feeling Ross Nichols come from Wales, which is not that good.
And you're the only one that's left there, right?
I'm the only one left here in Wales, I think. Now, yeah,
Brett
Ross left.
That's bad.
Yeah, no, it's weird. Like I was finding it funny online. Like Ross is Welsh or English, depending on who is talking about him. But obviously, yeah, like he, because when he comes home now and again, Patabo, we obviously that we're gonna train together. We haven't hooked up yet to train, but I'm hoping that we do get a chance, especially before ADCC, because the trials. Because obviously Ross went last time, and I rolled with him once in the lightweight camp I did a few months back, and he's definitely good.
Now, the interesting thing I sort of wanted to go into quite a bit, because on our podcast available on all platforms, we're talking about training a lot with the same kind of training partners and making the most out of that. And the way you said about doing that was sort of experimenting different avenues, like either positional stuff, very specific stuff, trying to work on their strengths. But when you have these less available training partners, high-profile guys, how would you like to train with them on that sort of limited time to play around with stuff, like to get the most out of it?
So, as in if I'm training with one of the high-profile guys, or if I'm training with
so a high-profile guy who comes in for like a weekend or a day or just a session.
I always find it quite awkward. So like, it's not like, I don't want to use the word dick measure because it sounds ridiculous, but it's not that. It's just the fact that obviously like it's kind of like say you were boxing sparring. It's kind of like you want to show you're good, but you don't want to knock them out either, like because they're gonna get quite tasty quite quick, you know. So like when I sparred with Fionn, I sparred with Fionn actually last week. She was home visiting home. Her parents live like, I don't know, 2 minutes from the gym, like literally around the corner. So she came down to spar when she's home from Ireland. And I feel like we both go, it's a really good competitive role and it's really enjoyable, but I don't think either of us really come out of the gates swinging either, you know, because especially when they're being welcome to my gym, you know, if I went to their gym, maybe I'd probably spar a little bit harder, because if I go into someone else's gym, there's 20 of them, like, I don't want to get killed by 20 guys. I want to kill the first guy, and then they go, shit, man, this guy's good, and then they start to respect you a bit more, you know. Like it happened to me in Poland. I taught a seminar in Poland, and then they were all like 80, 90 kilos, black belts, and they were like, "Oh, do you want to spar?" And I was like, "Yeah, cool, okay, I'll do a round." So I did a round with like a 90-kilo guy, and I was competing in 2 days' time.
Did you wear a
And
purple
then,
rash guard?
oh no, but this is the worst thing. The next guy was sitting, resting, watching me, and then he's like, "Me next," and I'm like, "All right, fine." So I spar with that guy, and then there's another guy sitting, resting, watching me, and he's like, "Me next," and I'm like, boys, how many of these rounds do you think I've got me? Like, you're like 20 kilos heavier more, and you're resting every time before you spar me. I was like, this is not going to go well eventually, is it? You know, so I just come out the gates really hard in those type of scenarios because I feel like you want to make them respect you quick. Where when you get these guys traveling to your gym to train, it's just nice to get some technical feel, you know, like when I sparred with Ross, again, we didn't go like mega hard, but I was like, man, the guy's got good guard retention. And Ross caught me in the shoulder clamp thing he does quite a bit. I managed to strip that a few times and try to start getting my passing going. But then you're talking about guys, you know, like, you know, JT Towers didn't pass the guy's guard in 10 minutes. I had a 5-minute round with him. So unless I was going absolutely A-game balls to the wall, like there's no way I'd even get a sniff of it. So it can be awkward, but it's nice to feel what they're doing. That's what I think is the biggest difference when I'm with those type of guys is that, like, say I usually enter the guard and I manage to get my students or that my training partners to like this far into the pass. Like with Ross, I was like there, and I was trying to see what he was doing differently compared to some people I teach or people I spar with usually. You know, the framework he was using, the grip sets he was working. He was really strong in his frames. He was, which I thought was super impressive. Very hard to make him turn left or right and collapse his legs. You know, so
Polaris with the clamping, trying that straight armbar to try and
Yep.
pass his guard. He did nice with that.
Yeah, he's really good. I thought like when you went with Ross, like I thought Dominic Dillon put in a killer performance against some Polaris. You know, I've seen a few posts online about people kind of putting Ross down on that one, and at the end of the day, the guy is only human. You know, you can't be on top of your game every single day of the week. Was it the best Ross we've seen? I don't think so, but considering it's not the best Ross we've seen, and he still managed to keep producing results, very, very, very impressive, you know. But yeah, I don't get that much chance to spar with that many guys. I get it all the time. People mess me like, oh, if you're ever in London, shoot me a message. We're training together. I was like, oh yeah, I just so happened to, you know, swing a left out of Swansea and hit London quite often. Like,
I got the wrong bus
don't
though.
happen. Like,
You fell
I
asleep on
never
the
just,
train.
I'm
Here
never
you are. You're
casually
in
just in
Camden.
London. Like, it's really far away. Like, really far. Like that literally like someone in like Spain saying to someone in France, like, oh, if you ever happen to just be in France, just let me know and we'll get some training together. Like, but that don't happen every day of the week. I don't just walk, like just stroll to London, like so. But I get messaged all the time. People message me all the time. They're like, oh, if you're ever here, I'm like, how would I be in Scotland? How would that just happen out of coincidence? I would just happen to be in Scotland, you know. So, I've only sparred with like Ross, Fionn as of late. That would say super high level. I haven't really sparred with many other. I'm trying to organize some training with Bradley Hill soon, so that should be really cool. I respect Bradley's game a lot.
Yeah, Shane.
So I'm looking forward to training with him.
He gave me a bit then, so.
Yeah, he's good. He is good, man. Bradley's good.
He's
You know,
very
no
good.
joke. Yeah. No, like you know, the guys like Bradley and especially Oliver Lavelle and that, you know, they've got such competitive experience, and that's one thing. For example, I know, obviously the players that reference Shane's match against Bradley, players, but there's one thing you can't underestimate, man, is that these guys have got such competitive experience, you know, and it doesn't matter whether you could beat them in the gym or not. Like on the stage, under that pressure, it's just a different world,
Yeah,
you know.
I think that's my downfall was I was just in awe of the fact I was there.
Yeah.
And I struggled with being in the moment. It was more the fact of on the lead up, all I could think was, shit, I'm on Polaris now. And that just kept playing on my mind.
Yeah, I tell everyone this when they try to get on to shows is that like if you're in that position where you really feel like, oh man, I can't believe I'm on the show, then I don't believe jiu-jitsu is ready to be on the show. You know, like I always think that once you should be on the show because you believe you deserve to be there. And I'm not saying you don't deserve to be there because you've got great jiu-jitsu. You know, you definitely deserve to be on a Polaris card. But unless you've got that faith in yourself, then when you go there with the approach of, I can't believe I'm here, the ability to produce a performance is very, very difficult. You know, like I don't think when you go to, like, when I go to the shows, when I first went to EBI, for example, I was like burnt out, horrible performance, gassed out horrendously. But I always feel like I'm getting better every time I perform on the stages. And I always tell everyone that, you know, you gotta not, it's not about not being grateful, because I'm grateful they're providing a platform to showcase my skills. But I honestly believe I deserve to be on that platform though, you know, and that's, I think you've got to get that belief in yourself that to be able to perform, you know.
It's strange that, because every time I've been on Grapple Fest before that, I always felt like I should have been there, and
Yep.
I do feel like I should have been on Polaris. I think it might. I don't know. I know Bradley's been a black belt probably about as long as I've been training.
Yep.
I think it's things like that kind of played on my mind a
Grapple Fest
little
and
bit.
Polaris, well, they've got quite a different feel. I like Grapple Fest is like almost, I don't say more chilled out vibe. I'm not sure. Like it's a bit more laid back, where you kind of like, yeah, just go out there and kind of have a ruck, you know. Where Polaris and
Do you think it's the stage? Because again, like Grapple Fest is on the ground, isn't it? And then Polaris is up on a
it's
platform.
in the nightclub setting. It's quite
couple of pints,
like, it's
and you're
weird.
right.
Loads of people think Grapple Fest is the best setting in the world. I prefer competing on like the stage with a crowd as opposed to the nightclub setting that they've got going. It feels like almost like an underground fight club type feel.
My Pantheon.
Which I think is like, it's like, man, we're pro jiu-jitsu athletes. I feel like as if we do like backyard brawling, you know. So, but it's a really cool vibe. But it's just different to Polaris. I think when you go to Polaris, or for example, when I fought Cass, EBI is very similar to Grapple Fest in that respect, in terms of, you know, it's kind of just all cool, chilled down. They're like, you ready to go? You ready to go? And you kind of just get going, you know. But Polaris and Cass, I have more like of the MMA show feeling. You know, where like you do the weigh-ins, you do the rules meeting.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of all sit in the separate change rooms. There's a lot like build up, and like you walk out to the platform as well. Kind of builds everything
Line
up
up beforehand as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is a bit of a different feeling, but I definitely feel like, you know, to compete at those shows, you just have to, you got to keep competing on them for one. You know, that you got to just keep going after it. But I tell a lot of people, you know, don't just take any match, because imagine the UFC, say like you fought MMA and the UFC said, oh, do you want a short notice fight? And you go, yeah, go on, cool, why not? Because I've always wanted to be there, so I'll just do it anyway.
You get
And then
Kazmat
you
on
get
6 days.
and yeah, then you get knocked out in the first round. Okay, you get knocked out in the first round. And the chance of the UFC going like, oof, I tell you what, we'll keep this guy. Like he sounds like someone we will get back on. You know, like it's a big risk reward to take on the short notice fights, because to build your profile and to build a career, you know, you want to be going up the card on a show. If you start as the prelim fight, you want to work to the top of the prelims and the bottom of the main card. And then like I really want to be a main event. Like that hasn't happened in Polaris yet. Even though like I thought mine and my title fight, for example, should have been the main event over Nick Rodriguez. Personally myself, I thought that made more sense, as it was a title fight and the other fight on the card wasn't a title fight. But I'm want to push quite hard to be a title fight on that show. But I started, you know, as the bottom of the main event, bottom of the main card. So I type that, you know, try to work yourself up the card and push higher, because once you start getting to the bottom of the card, that's when you start dropping off the card.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's one thing I always tend to do, the opposite of what you said. I generally don't turn a match down. I don't think I've ever turned down anyone that I've been offered before. And I guess that's it can be a good way of looking at it, but like you say, not always the best.
I don't think. It depends what stage of your career in. Like, as in, Conor McGregor's a really good example. I talk to my students about this all the time. Say, for example, if I just took any match now, I've got like, I could drop downwards. You know, I could go down in my career. To get the right opponents to go up is important for me right now, I feel. In particular, with like the run to ADCC and a few other things coming up where I want to push my status up there. You know. But say like you're in your position, or for example, I know you fought my student Tom Barry. Tom Barry's in a similar situation where, you know,
I've got a rematch with him in October, actually.
Yeah, he said about that. He's super excited about it. Like we actually
me
joke
too.
about. I actually watched Polaris with Tom, and when we watched your match, I was like, "Ooh, Tom, I don't think you're ready for Polaris, but if this guy basically beat you and then he lost on Polaris, you are screwed. We were joking with him, and but he's super excited for the match. But that's that type of thing for you guys is brilliant. Just have as many matches you can, because if you think about the Conor McGregor effect, where he was doing super good. Then went to UFC and then just went right, go, and then won like 6, 7, 8 fights straight off the bat. Super impressive, wicked performance. His career went from like, I think like in a council house to like millionaire in like 2.5 years, you know.
Yeah, it
So
wasn't long.
a lot of guys who kind of look too much into which matches they're having, they can't really build themselves up. But once you start going and you get there, you're only over 3 to 5 matches away from nobody knowing you to everyone knowing you. I don't know.
Yeah.
Did you guys watch the third course card this weekend?
I've seen clips of it.
Which
Yeah,
show
so
was
like-
this
I
one
know
then?
the
'Cause I was
results.
watching the I was watching Brave UFC, and then there was the one from the other week, the Who's Number One thing. So which one's this one?
We're the opposite. I watched just the Who's Number One, third course grappling, basically all jiu-jitsu cards.
Yeah.
Third course grappling was the Kumite, the Riotolo brothers were in. Hanata
Oh
Furuta was
yeah,
in
of
it.
course.
Yeah,
And
that was it.
Alberto Jimenez was in it, And Alberto Jimenez, man, he is class. Like, he's been wicked. Like, through this lockdown, he's been competing all the time. I think he's banked like 20 or 30K on third course through winning the tournaments. So, but again, like, I didn't know who Alberto Jimenez was until 2 months ago. And I've watched him compete like 6 times in the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's crazy,
so-
crazy active, and he's
Yep.
beaten some really big names. I mean, he beat Nick Rodriguez, Nick Rodriguez as well. The size difference there was crazy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he beat Nicky Rod. He beat
Both
Wagner.
fuck, that was crazy match.
Beat the Viotolos, all in the last like 6 weeks, man. The guy's insane. But that's what I mean. Like when you're in that stage now, Roberto's only a couple of wins away now from probably ADCC or one of the bigger shows, or starting to build his way up to getting high up on the rankings and stuff. So he's super talented. Though, to be fair to him, he's wicked.
I think he had his first gi match as well at Black Belt against Keenan and beat Keenan on points.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he had his first gi match against Keenan. I think that was on
Matt Morris or something.
No, it was the one that Seth Daniels runs. Fight to Win.
Oh,
Fight to win.
Yeah, he fought on Fight to Win. Yeah, I watched actually, it was Fight to Win last week. I watched that as well. It was really good. But it's annoying, man. I keep watching these American cards, and I'm like, trying to fly to Texas. I don't know. Like just go fly there.
Yeah.
I just see what happens. Just see if I get some
America
matches.
right now.
What's that?
Yeah.
What are you saying,
If
Riley?
you had been American right now.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna do the trials, I think, and if no pro cards in the UK happen in November, December, I'm just gonna fly to Texas for 6 weeks.
Seems like that's what it takes.
I just hold a sign and
Living
say
there.
we'll do jiu-jitsu for money.
We're all for money. Now that's a question as well. So there's a few things in that I want to go over. So with Polaris and your next match in there's a little triangle of you, Ethan Krellinston. I always call him Krellinston, but it's not it's Krellinston. And the Rio Tolo brother who he fought. I'm not sure which one it was. He fought
Cade,
one.
I thought, yeah.
Yeah, he fought him on Who's Number One.
Cade fought Ethan on Who's Number One.
Yeah, and also Nicky Ryan as well, because it's between you guys. Who would you like as your next opponent out of those guys?
I personally would love the 145 match against Nicky Ryan because I wanted 145 initially. Like I literally fought a title eliminator for the 145 title. Then I got offered the 155 title. Then I got offered the 135 title. And I still have won my eliminator for the 145. I'm happy to find another eliminator for 145. But if it comes to like relinquishing a belt, I'd relinquish one of the other titles to fight for 145.
Champ.
Because I just want to prove that I'm the best 145er in Europe and then further, So, like, I'd fight Tom Halpin for a title eliminator. That would be wicked. I'd love that match. Tom Halpin.
That'd be a fun match to watch.
I'm pretty sure I'll get the Tom Halpin match in the ADCC trials now. Like he probably is the favorite to win the trials because he's won the trials before. But I'd probably say I'm one of the favorites to get to the finals as well because obviously I've competed at a high level before. So I think that could be interesting. I think I'd really like a match against one of the Meows. That would be fantastic.
I'd see the rematch between you and Zhao.
Yeah, I'd like the match against Joe. I think I'd like that one back. That'd be good. I actually want the match back against Cade as well. I'm not putting it down to I had an off night, because at the end of the day, he could have been an off night as well. I don't know. I mean, like I can't guarantee I beat him if I fought him again, but in my head, I believe I could do better than I did. So I want to prove that to myself now. So I want to fight Cade again, and I really like to fight Gio Martinez again. I fought him
I
like
was
3 years ago on EBI.
EBI.
15.
I watched that
And
match not long ago. I was really
yeah,
impressed considering it was what was it 2018?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I just improved a lot since then. You know, like, I feel like my game's gone like just going levels and levels all the time. And when I watched Gio fought in Casa, when I did the tournament 135, and I actually like listened to a podcast, like a breakdown of like who the favorites in the brackets were. And in my bracket, obviously Meow was the favorite by a considerable margin. As in, I didn't even get a look in. Like no one even mentioned my name as a contender at all. And Meow was the favorite, followed by um, Alicon. I think they said. I think they said this bracket was quite easily winnable for Gio. And then the other side, they said Gio was the favorite to win. You know, that side of the bracket. And Gio got third that side of the bracket. You know, I got third my side of the bracket, but I'm the only person who drew with the guy who won it, which is why I believe I deserve the rematch against Zhao, because I'm the only guy who's actually drawn against the current champion, because Zhao beat everyone else by submission or points, where we drew. So it makes sense to me that I deserve the rematch against him. But again, I'd happily fight maybe Junie. No, Junie got second, so I'd happily fight Junie for a shot at the Kasai title. You know, like I'm happy to fight virtually anyone at 145. 155 is not really like the way I want to be competing at, especially the day before. Because when you get guys like the bigger dudes cutting down for 155, they can be quite, it's quite a lot to deal with, especially if the time's 15 minutes. But I believe players are changing their matches all to 10 minutes now, which I prefer. I think 10 minutes is about the maximum a pro match should be.
Yeah. Be a lot. You got less time then, so you're going to be more explosive, and you're going to try and open up a little
Yeah.
bit more and a little bit sooner, rather than leaving it to who's got the better cardio.
Yeah, I've actually been really enjoying the third course rules. You know, the 6 minutes points, where you can win by tech, fall, or submission. So if you get, I think it's 12 points.
12 points, yeah.
They go 12 points clear, you win, or submission, and then if you don't, it goes into golden score. Like I've only done golden score once before, but I think golden score probably is closer to who's got better jiu-jitsu rather than, for example, eBay overtime. I think eBay overtime is cool. When you're there, it is wicked. When you're watching it, you are literally going wild. But in terms of, is it the best guy with the best jiu-jitsu is going to win the match? I think quite often it's actually not.
No, definitely not. It could be the best guy with the best defense, who's just practiced arm bars and choked from the back
And
for 6 weeks.
Submission underground, doesn't it? When people sort of play for the 5 minutes and then they want the overtime.
That's
that was Craig Jones' argument, wasn't it?
That is the problem. Is submission underground is EBI, but obviously with shorter regulation time.
And a
So
cage.
people are stalling on EBI. You know, people are stalling 10 minutes on EBI. Yet on the submission underground, they're obviously just going to stall the 5 minutes, aren't they?
I bet it's easy to stall if you can stall for 10.
Yeah, so I don't like that, because at EBI, obviously, you get neutral position, as in you both get to take each other's backs, where if I took your back in regulation but you didn't take mine, it's just such a crazy rule set to be gifted that opportunity, even though you did nothing in regulation, you know?
I think it was Dan Strauss on his podcast said that, because he was on EBI and he lost due to the rule set, that he thinks that you should only be allowed positions you got in the match in overtime.
Oh, that's a good.
I should get a finish from.
Yeah, that's why actually I think in EBI overtime, you should only be allowed to regain a position that you actually achieved during the match. Yeah, I think that too.
Yeah, make it fair, and it would show who's got a better jiu-jitsu then, because you're actually going to be trying for these positions throughout the match rather than just defending.
Exactly. Well, that's where it goes happening, because the guys are in position for the overtime, the golden score, you know, so you can really put yourself in an advantageous position.
I do like that rule set. Something I'd definitely like to give a go.
Now, golden score is an interesting one, because I like that for more sort of traditional sense. Because when it comes to a lot of like sub-only shows, this is where the whole argument of not having technical ability, but you can sort of jump on a sort of a leg lock or something and almost get away with certain things. Whereas you've got a bit more of the, I don't know, more values of what jiu-jitsu is, and that kind of control and trying to, I don't know, a bit more substance behind what you actually achieved. You see what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I'm not big on the submission. I'd rather submission attempt be a point, like Naga, than it be no points, but closest to a submission wins. Because close to a submission is subjective, just totally and utterly subjective. There's no, like, it's not in grey area. It's just rubbish. Like, because how do you know how flexible my shoulders are, my feet are, how hard it is to choke me? Like, different people find different things. Like, for example, like, I'm very hard to submit with leg locks. I've got really, really flexible feet. So when I get tied up in legs, I'm not really that bothered. But then the guy literally is just like pretending to do a heel hook to me, pretending to straight foot lock me, and it's not on at all. Yet on the commentary, I've listened to it back sometimes. The commentator's like, "Ooh, he's in deep there," and I'm like, "No, I'm not. No, I'm literally not. I can sit here for an hour if you want me to, and I will not get smeared." And the truth is, to pass guard without giving up a leg lock entry is very difficult. So in a sub-only show, you're almost punished for trying to pass guard.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, every time you try to pass, you get your legs tied up once. They get a super deep submission entry, and now you've got to untie and then try and pass again. So it's not. I don't think it's very encouraging to for people to engage, especially from the top position. You get a lot of guys just sitting on their butts and scooting towards, basically waiting for you to try and put pressure on, and then they'll tie your legs and get the judge's decision based on close submission attempts, which is subjective.
Yeah, I do think it is also, it does show how good your jiu-jitsu is purely from winning by points alone. Because if you can score on someone, it shows that you're able to get to that position and they're not going to stop you. And just because they jump on a submission doesn't mean that they're any better than you just because you dominated them, but they might have got a cheeky submission attempt.
Well, that's why I think if they just give points, so because in your head you might be like, no, that wasn't close. But when I fought Naga, sometimes I've looked at the board and I'm like, oh man, I'm like, the other guys are 3 points because he's done this to my foot 3 times. But at least if he's got a representative of a point, I can go, right, man, I'm 3-0 down, I've got to work now because. But in my head, I could be like, oh, well, my sub was quite close. When I fought Zhao Miao, when I fought Zhao and we had a point each, my first heel hook got a point. His toe hold got a point, but my heel hook while he was toe holding me didn't get a point. And the toe hold was like literally nowhere near. Like he could start there 10 times over and he would not submit me. I guarantee 100% of the time I would never get submitted by that. But he got a point. Yeah, and I felt good. I felt good on my attack, and I didn't get a point. And then I stood up and I was like, they give him a point. And I was like, how can you give 1 point to one person when both people have a submission attempt?
You know what that would be? That would just be the angle of where the judge is.
Exactly. So, well, I spoke to someone about this the other day, and at the end of the day, all rule sets can be manipulated. It's very hard to find the best one that works. The only thing I think that would change this in a lot of pro jiu-jitsu in particular was would either be harsher stalling calls, or for example, there's the argument in MMA, like obviously you get a show and a win bonus. It's hard because if you get a win, like it encourages you to go for you don't want to lose anyway. So the win bonus as the incentive to win, it's just not true because
who wants
to lose an MMA fight anyway? It's not an incentive to win. It's just the bonus for winning. But in obviously jiu-jitsu, there's not really that kind of incentive there. So it's very difficult to kind of come together with the best. Like, do you just pay MMA fighters a set salary each, as in no one gets a win bonus, so you both just try equally as hard as you can? Or in jiu-jitsu, do you give a submission do you give a submission bonus? I know, for example, I spoke to Jeremy Skinner. Jeremy Skinner got a submission bonus on Polaris, and he was like, man, I'm so happy he got the sub because that covered like the extra costs of the stuff I've spent out this week, so like he kind of broke even via getting the submission. So for jiu-jitsu players, it's very difficult because if you push too hard, you lose and nobody wants to watch you again. You don't push hard enough and then you could lose by rubbish submission attempts. It's I don't think anyone's cracked the rule set yet. I don't think anyone's really come together with the best rule set.
Whenever there's a new rule set out, it's always the best rule set, just because someone's not been able to exploit it yet.
100%. That's the problem. Is the longer the rule set is out, the more it'll get exploited. And
But EBI was
that's just
fantastic at the
fact.
beginning, and then people started playing it.
Exactly. Yeah, they did. Yeah, I think like the one I like. I'm a big fan of is the fact that on Casa you get multiple fights in a night, regardless of win or loss. I think that's really cool for an athlete, because then you're not sitting there going, "Oh man, if I mess this fight up, I'm done for the night and no one's gonna see me again." You know, like you get 3 chances to do something spectacular. You know, which is I think is really really good.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because you might just have a one-off match, and
Yeah, so like in the Grand Prix tournament you did, you know, you could have maybe the nerves got out your way from the Bradley match, and you could have fought again against somebody else and done just fine.
Like a leaderboard bracket kind
Yeah,
of thing, and then the
that
winner
would
out
have
of
been
like
nice.
2 out of 3 gets it or something.
That's
Yeah.
why I like grappling industries with the 4 or 5 matches guaranteed.
Yeah, I've never done a grappling industries, but I do fancy doing them. But they just there's one in London, yeah.
yeah,
London.
they do London. I think Manchester.
Who must have done it? I think you would have known, wouldn't you?
On this computer. So sorry about that, guys. I had a bit of a technical issue. So where were we? We were talking about grapple industries. So
Yeah,
that's set the round robin format. So what was your kind of opinion on the bigger sort of shows, Ash, on that from a different kind of perspective? So say like you have your super fights. Do you feel it loses value having multiple super fights in the same bracket as such?
No, it does depend. Like, so for example, with ADCC, although I think it's brilliant, what would be even more brilliant is if like 2 pools of 8 all fought each other, and then like the top 2 from each pool went on to semi-final and final. So like basically like it happened to me before. Like I actually fought in the British Open, and I had, do you know Charlie McDonnell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Charlie McDonnell was one side of the bracket, and I was on the other side of the bracket. And no, so I fought Charlie first. So I beat Charlie first 2-0 in my match, and then I went on, and Charlie ended up with I think it was bronze, but Charlie by far was my hardest match of the day. You know, Charlie didn't medal. It was some of that. So basically, like what happens a lot in tournaments is, you know, like if these 2 guys meet here, they should have been the finals, but it was bracketed, so these 2 guys meet first. Then whoever loses doesn't get the silver medal. Although everyone should be fighting for the gold, and you know you should always win every match is kind of the competitive mindset of it. But you know it doesn't really prove who's the second best in the world in ADCC or the third best in the world, does it? It only proves who the number 1 is really. And even then, styles makes fights. So the guy who got first, he might have actually lost to someone who got knocked out in the quarterfinals. The other side of the bracket, you just never know, you know, because styles make fights. So it'd be really interesting to see how, you know, like with the ranking system, it's very difficult to make a clear-cut rankings where, like, if you take football, for example, the rankings are totally fair. Everyone plays everyone home and away.
Yeah, I almost said fight everyone then, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's what they're doing.
Depends on the fans.
Everyone plays everyone home and away, and until there's like a league within jiu-jitsu, and it's the same for MMA. Until there's a league established where everyone is competing against everyone throughout a season or throughout a year or whatever you want to do, then rankings are just subjective. Like us folk could just sit around right now and just go, right, who do we think is the number 1 in the world? And then just keep going down. Do you know what I mean? Which is mad because I became ranked 11th in the world when I lost. So I lost a match to a guy ranked like 8th at the time, and I got put in as 11th.
Who was that?
Cade Riatolo.
Oh, okay.
But literally 8 months before that, over the 8 months before that, I beat someone who was 6th in the world, didn't get ranked, and I beat someone 7th in the world and didn't get ranked. So it's just weird that, you know, it's just so subjective to whoever's sitting down to do the ranking system. Could just be like, have you seen that kid? He's really good. Let's put him in there this week.
I think it's hard to do like that when no one's like fighting as such under like one banner. It's all on these shows all across the world, all over the place at different times. There's no set season or anything like that. It's just all over the place.
100%, and that's why it's when I see like a lot of people post like, so I was ranked number 1 in the world in IBJJF at brown belt nogi for my weight, and I literally that week lost a match. You know, I became ranked number 1, and then I lost to somebody a week after, who wasn't ranked. Then I
You
beat
can't even
someone who was
remember.
ranked like 3rd, but literally all I did is I just paid to go to a load of tournaments in Europe, and got ranking points. So it's just the only real fair way is a league, you know, to get ranking situations, which is why like round robin, for example, in tournaments is really interesting because it definitely allows you to start really getting to grasp with who is the best within that field. Because if everyone's not fighting each other, then you don't actually know if this guy would have beaten this guy who's knocked out by that guy, who then beat that guy. You know, like you just don't know that.
I mean, that's a different dynamic in itself as well, because when you say about playing the rule set as well, this adds another element to it. Say you've got a match like one against Ethan where it's just non-stop, constant, like back and forth, versus you get someone, you catch them straight away with a, I don't know, sub like 30 seconds.
Yep.
Like your gas tank is all over the place, trying to organise that and trying to get some sort of semblance of
Yep.
structure. But even then, you still have the sort of micro leagues. You've got your own sort of smaller ways of breaking this down. And on the same subject of that, I think I asked this on the podcast, but again, it'd be interesting to hear your answer now.
Yep.
When you have different sort of styles of opponents, say like Ethan, for example, you've got someone very dynamic guard. That match went all over the place. Anyone who hasn't seen it, watch that match. It's incredible. But anyway, so you get these sort of different styles. But when you have a tournament, you don't really know these people. Say like at the blue belt, purple belt, the divisions,
Yep.
you don't know your opponents from Adam. Like, how do you plan for that regards? Is stylistically your own game versus a specific style?
So I always say that like, so right now we're training for ADCC trials. So we've added in ADCC rounds where we do halfway is no score, halfway is score, you know, so we're just doing that. But then 80% of the training is exactly the same all the time. You know, we do these like the similar warm-ups, similar drills, similar specific sparring. We do 4 rounds anyway, you know, all the rounds are still the same. And I always tell everyone, you know, at the end of the day, in any rule set you do in good jiu-jitsu, still good jiu-jitsu. So if, for example, you took down pass guard, mounted, took back, and choked the person, if you pick any rule set in the world, that's a win. You know, so like that's why I always believe that when you train, you should train with the idea of good jiu-jitsu in your head, not how to win a rule set. You know, if you're practicing stalling out through the no score period of a time frame, what are you doing?
You have a day
Like,
off.
what are you doing? Like, come on, just like, because you got to beat that guy in the first 3 minutes. You don't even know you couldn't. You know, so like, so when I started this week, we started my ADCC camp this week for the trials. On Monday, when I sparred with some of the heavier guys, I played guard for the first 3 minutes, swept them on the 3-minute mark to get 2 points, and then passed the guard and tried to submit them. And then I went home and I was like, look, so you proved you could beat them if it was an ADCC round. So how about on Wednesday when I trained with them again? I was like, why don't we just go down and see if we can just beat them with good jiu-jitsu regardless of what the round is? And I happened to submit them both within 3 minutes that time because I was like, well, just do good jiu-jitsu anyway. Don't worry about whether it's 3 minutes or 4 minutes or 5 minutes. Just go down and just try to beat them. And obviously then I managed to beat them before the scores even became a thing. So I do think if you just push on the idea of good jiu-jitsu over trying to think about how you can anticipate an opponent or anticipate a rule set, then you're going to get a lot more progression.
Now, I like that sort of transition as well, because again, even though you're getting results in playing to a format, you then went back to not basics as such, but sort of the fundamentals. Okay, this is sort of principles. If I get the submission, call it what you want. As a submission in EBI time, call it whatever sort of makeshift rules you want to make it, you still got them. Now, regards of durability and your own kind of well-being. So say like the amount of damage you're taking in a match versus the amount of damage you're taking in training, like how far you let subs go. Do you have a rule of thumb, so to speak, for like how much damage you're willing to take, how much something can bend, and how many pops is too many?
In training, I like, although my training partners would say I'm a bit of a psychopath in terms of like seeing how far my limbs can go. I definitely would respect this submission. Like, I think in training, the way to view it is hypothetically, say I sparred with Riley. Riley, how much do you weigh?
About 71.
Oh, so you're about my weight, and what belt level are you?
Blue.
Okay, let's say Riley got me to a guillotine position, and I was like at the brink of like, oh, I might have to tap, might not, and I got my head out. It makes no difference in that session, because if that was Tankini on my neck, I'm done. He is beating me. Do you know what I mean? So the way I was trying to tell my students to think about it, it's not about pointers you shouldn't have been there. So you should view it as the person who is world class, who I want to beat, they would have put me away with that. I get it quite a lot with when I spar with some of the 80 plus kilo guys in my gym. I get to their back and I go for rear nakeds, and they're literally just like peeling my hands off over and over again and grip fighting. And I'm like, look, that's really cool, man. I'm glad you're doing really well, and obviously I'm gonna keep trying to practice to improve my finish rate. But I was like, imagine the guy in your back has got 10 more kilos. Like your ability to pull their hands off quite easily is significantly less. So that's why, when I'm in submissions in the gym, I kind of just punish myself in my head anyway, because I'm like, oh man, if you had Ethan on your back right now, it don't matter if you get out of this person's back take, you're not getting out of Ethan's, Like if I was like in a deep heel hook and I'm like, well, if that was Nicky on my leg, that was probably game over. It's not good enough. So I try to think of it that way as opposed to do I tap or don't I tap? But at the end of the day, I shouldn't have been there anyway. When it comes to tournaments, like I wouldn't let my ligaments in my knee or my arms, my elbow or anything in my arms break. So my shoulders, I wouldn't let them tear. My elbow, I wouldn't let anything happen there. My knee ligaments, I wouldn't do anything to them. But if it came to my feet, like just the ligaments and tendons on my feet, I would happily take a couple of cracks or pops, which I have done in the past. Like Imanari, when I fought him, my feet were like that the next day. Both of my feet were huge, really swollen. But I've got super high flexible feet anyway. So
They are now. They were before.
yeah, they are. My feet can like just touch the floor flat, when I lie my legs straight. So I got really high flexible ankles. Hence why I'm quite hard to submit in a heel hook position. So yeah, I don't treat the gym. The way I treat the gym differently is the fact that obviously I assume the person would, where in tournament, depending on what's on the line, my fighting is the 80cc gold medal, because I might be tempted to leave my arm break for 80cc gold. If I'm fighting on a title eliminator for Polaris arm break, no, definitely not. There is nothing about that is risk reward is in your favor. So, but I've been submitting tournament for a really long time, and I'd like to keep it. The last time I actually got submitted within a regulation period was actually Casino, who I actually want to compete against. I really want to compete against him again. He knee-barred me in my first Worlds at black belt, and I've been a black belt for 5 years, so I don't think I've been submitted in the last 4.5 years, except for EBI overtime.
Now that is a statement in itself. And when it comes to having that kind of, is that even playing in your head at all that you've had this length of time? Because again, when it comes to status and titles and this, that, and the other, it can easily work against you. You can put more pressure on yourself. Do you feel like you can't risk losing this record of having this amount of time and being unsubmitted? Is that never?
No, not at all, because like it was getting into my head last year. Like when I lost to Richard Alcon on Kasai, it was actually my first loss in just over 2 years. Like my first actual match lost. I lost a match in 2 years. My last loss before that was actually to Gio Martinez on EBI. So it was a 2 year where I kind of won. I was on a winning streak. But the problem is, it's 2 years of just like one match every 6 to 8 weeks. It's just not enough matches in a year. Like I maybe get up to 10 matches in a year, which isn't enough. So the only thing that is possible, as obviously I was fighting a lot of high level guys during that period, which was cool. But the not getting submitted thing isn't ideal, because I say to a lot of people, like, if you take third course grappling, I watched this weekend. There's like a lot of guys who compete on third course, and I've never heard of them. They're obviously very good because they're on third course grappling, but they go like the distance with Wagner maybe. Wagner doesn't submit them. Like at no point does that indicate that person's ability to be able to beat Wagner there or anytime in the future. You know, so your ability to not get submitted is no indication of whether you could actually beat that person in front of you, which is why I'm very, very disappointed with my match against Kid Viatolo, because I didn't feel under threat at any point of being submitted, but at no point did I feel offensive in the match. And it's the only match I've had in the last, as long as I can remember now, where I didn't feel offensive at all. And that was my problem. I felt like if it was football, I felt like I didn't leave any goals to the net, but at no point did I get possession of the ball.
It's parking the
And
bus.
for me, that's just not acceptable. You know, you can't do that in a match. You can't do that in a sporting event. And that's why I want the match back, because I didn't feel it was back and forth. I felt like I was just 11 men on the goal line. Even though I didn't feel like the ball was going to go through, I wasn't doing anything anyway, you know, so I wasn't happy with it. And that's why I want the match back. So in terms of the pressure of not getting submitted, that doesn't really get to me, because that only proves that I cannot be submitted where I want to win. So the pressure of when I hadn't lost in a long time, that was getting to me. And when I did lose, I was actually a bit of a sigh of relief, because I was like, man, we can just go to jiu-jitsu and enjoy it. You know, it's not all the way to losing, just go out there and perform. And then I actually, you know, I went from my first loss in 2 years to drawing with Miao 20 minutes later, you know, and I had one of my best matches where people have written me off. You know, if you had to put money on, am I going to beat Zhao Miao? 99% of people in the world would 100% bet the house against me. You know, so
Arguably, you could have won that as well, really.
yeah, that's it. I thought I beat him. So I thought I'd beaten Zhao under the rule set. So that's my point, is that, like, you know, I went from losing to Richard Alcon, who I'd not really heard of. Even though Richard Alcon then went on to beat Gianni Grippo in ADCC. You know, I lost to him, and I was like, that's a really rough loss to take, because we kind of thought I was going to run through him. And then obviously I beat him on Plaza, which I was happy about. But with Zhao then, you know, I beat him 20 minutes later after having my first loss. So it was about, for me, it's just about competing and putting the best performance you can.
Did Camille Wilk have a match? Was it against Paolo or was it against Jiao? Gone couple first. I think it was Paolo.
Camille fought. I think Camille fought Zhao and Paolo fought Jeremy Skinner, maybe.
I was there, but I can't remember.
Or Paolo fought.
Jeremy
It was.
has fought Camille.
It was Frank Rosenthal, Jeremy Skinner, Paolo Zhao, Camille, and who's the sixth guy? Oh, and no, was it Ben Eddy? Not Jeremy Skinner. It was Ben Eddy.
Yeah, Ben Eddy Imanari.
Yeah, Ben Imanari. Yeah, that was the one. I remember, because I saw the poster, and I'd actually beaten 5 out of the 6 guys within the last 12 months. So it was really cool, you know, because obviously they were all really good. But I'd beaten everyone. I fought everyone bar Paolo. So I wanted to fight Paolo because I hadn't fought him. And obviously Grapple Fest, it was cool to have those guys on there, you know. But I would have liked the match against Paolo. That would have been cool.
I mean, the reason I bring that up as well is because your match against Camille was a huge reason why I really got into your sort of style of jiu-jitsu as well. Because I've always sort of followed you anyway. But when it came to someone as dynamic as, with leg locks especially, as Camille, and obviously that day was really fucking hot. So, like, everybody's focus was just there anyway. Just be able to shut that down. Just absolutely shut it down as well. And I'm trying to think as well, what else was it?
Yeah, I enjoyed the match against Camille. I was nervous about it because I was meant to have a rematch with Camille actually a few months back. Just literally 2 weeks after lockdown happened, I was meant to have a match against Camille in Ireland. I was gutted about it because I don't know how Camille thought the match was going to go, if it was going to go differently or not. But in my opinion, I felt I could actually perform better against Camille than I did the first time. I wasn't like nervous of his leg locks. I was wary, you know, like I didn't think he was going to submit me with them. But I definitely thought. I fought Camille on Pantheon.
Oh, that's one I just watched. Yeah.
Yeah, I fought Camille Pantheon, and I actually felt in control the whole time. I watched the match back, and I've listened to commentary, and you know, they said that must be, you know, it must be frustrating. I can't I couldn't navigate his guard and that, you know. But I was happy just to keep plodding along, and I knew eventually the pass would come because I felt like Camille showed me his hand. You know, I felt like he showed me his full hand in the first full minute when he literally got his X on my feet. He hit a beautiful switch entry on me and then attacked my heel, and it felt like nothing. So I was happy just to strip, and then I was just going to keep going until I got the pass, and I did, you know. So I'm interested to see how the match goes with Camille again, because I don't know if he's going to edit his game, whether he's going to play top or something else. But you're talking about a guy, you know, like Camille only lost to Gio Martinez in ADC beating the actual ADCC by a slouch. And it was cool for me because that showed to me that I could compete at ADCC one day when I fought him, because he's an ADCC vet. It was nice to have that on my resume. But he definitely, I'm definitely interested to see how he's adapted his game.
I mean, a huge part of that as well. Sorry, right. Well, I found it was really interesting as well with the. All right, you go, go on.
No, sorry. I was just wondering how long ago that match was. Like how much
Against
time
Camille, I think it was middle of last year. But Camille's actually doing ADCC now in 8 weeks, so I might have a rematch against him in the trials. Which for me again, that I really enjoy that because I think it's going to take me 3 to 4 matches to get to the final of the ADCC trials, and if Camille is one of them, and maybe another UK guy is one of them, I feel really comfortable about getting to the semis or the finals. So. But it depends how Camille's adapted.
With Camille as well, in that bracket as well, it's really interesting because what really gave you a big staple on why your leg lock defense was so on point is prior to that, in the little 4-man tournament for the helmet. Have you got the helmet there?
Yeah, it's upstairs.
Yeah, grab it in a second. He submitted Jay Butler in like 30 seconds with like an outside heel hook. So if you then to be like right in the saddle and just be like, yeah, it's fine. Like just a proper stamp on that. Sorry, Shane, what are you saying?
I was only going to say I'd like to see you against Jeremy Skinner because Jeremy submitted Camille quite handily as well, didn't he?
Yeah, that's what I'd like. I would like to fight. I said I want anyone like right now in particular because I've competed for ages. I let you compete against anyone. I just want anyone at 66 or 70. Like the UK promoters always message me, and it's like oh, do you wanna compete against this guy who's 78? And I'm like, no. Like, no, I don't. No, I don't. Because I actually offered the match against Jed instead of who's the guy he fought?
One
No.
Yeah.
Dino.
Yeah, I got offered the match against Jed instead of Dino first, and I was like, look, I don't understand why I'm getting this match offer. I should be getting like a 66 kilo guy in line for a title so I can fight for Nikki. I'm going down in weight, and these guys are heavy.
What's beating Jed really going to do for you at this stage in your career? It's going to be better for him than it is you.
It is. It is a lose-lose for me if I fought Jed, to be honest, because the guy's really, really, really good. He could definitely beat me for sure. But at the same time, if I beat him, everyone would be like, well, yeah, probably expected that. So it didn't really do me favors to take the match, But I'm just waiting for like another UK guy really at 66 or 70 to break through and get capitalizing, so I can get more active in the UK. I think 80 kilo mark in the UK is super stacked, and those guys are competing each other all the time. But 70 and 66, there just doesn't seem to be that many guys, which is a shame.
Give me a few years, will you?
Now, with this
by the time you're a black belt or competing at a high level, I'll be retired.
Now, this is always an interesting sort of dynamic when it comes to matchmaking, especially in jiu-jitsu. Because here we have well-experienced black belt, and we also have a very high-level competitive purple belt. Now, when it comes to Shane being I'm not talking about Riley. You're not going to be graded yet. But anyway, when you get these sort of, I don't know, because when Shane competes against black belts, it's a win-win for him. The black belt's got a lose-lose situation. Either he beats the purple belt on face value despite being, at the level he is, or he loses to a purple belt when, even the purple belt is a high level. And when it comes to you being the high-level black belt, when you get someone like a Shane, for example, like a Jed or someone like that, how would you find those opportunities? Because again, you could either stamp out a prospect whilst also putting yourself on the line. How do you feel with these kind of scenarios?
So when I got offered the Nikki match, when I was first trying Nikki, Nikki was a purple belt at the time, and I was like, oh my god, you're gonna lose this purple belt kid. And I was like, cool,
Cheers.
That's fine, because if I lose to him, man, you would have lost as well. I don't understand. Like I train with you every day. If I can beat you, and he beats me, then he probably could beat you as well. It was funny in the gym. Even like some of the kids, like some of the teenagers, they were bantering me. They're like, "You're gonna lose to someone my age," and I was like, "You're fine." He's obviously he's obviously really good, don't he? If I lost to Cabrini, who's 30, 38, you would be like, you lost to an old man. It's just not. It is not true. Your jiu-jitsu ability is your jiu-jitsu ability, regardless of age, size, whatever. I think the biggest difference competing against someone below your status in terms of just where they're at in their career. Is just whether it'll elevate your career or not. You know, like, and that's the one I would take matches for. Is like, obviously I fought Kev Corkill recently. And in my opinion, obviously on paper, I should have beaten him, and I felt comfortable when I did fight him, and I did manage to get the win. But I was nervous about that match because if I had messed up royally and got triangled, or he looked me, or whatever, then literally a lot of my hard work that I've done kind of just goes on the toilet, you know? Like, I spent thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds competing all over the world to build a reputation so that I could get on these pro shows. So when, you know, for like a people about in the UK was like, oh, would you have a match against me? I'd say, I probably would just say yeah anyway. But, you know,
Shane.
I did do a lot of hard work to get there first, you know?
I mean, that's kind of where it gets really tricky, because as much as you built the foundation, if someone else sort of jumps on that, yes, it's kind of this. Someone would have done it for you in the same breath if they would have given you an opportunity to then give them a match and then not take their name, but kind of, okay, I've got them on my resume, and then so on and so forth. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword that as much as you put the work in, you still need to, I don't know, it's an interesting one. Sorry.
That's the I always look at like so when I speak to people like I teach a seminar maybe, or I teach or I have a jiu-jitsu match and say I get paid £500 for a jiu-jitsu match. Again, I was like, you get paid £500 for 10 minutes, and I'm like, I can see in your head how you think that's incredible.
Or the
But
overheads.
one, you can't. It's not like you're getting that rate of pay like
Every
30
time.
times a month. Do you mean like 10? Like, that's not true. And plus, like, I think I counted 1 year, and I probably spent like I think it was about £20,000 of my own money and my wife's money. Unfortunately, she was on board to fly to America and compete in the Pans, then compete in Worlds, then fly to the Europeans, then fly over Europe to compete. Then you know, like, I was spending thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds to go. Like, I remember one year I went to Worlds and I lost 2-0 first match, and I was like, well, that's £2,000 down the toilet. Excellent. You know, so like when people are like, oh, you went £500 for 10 minutes, I'm like, but I'm still in a deficit by miles. Like, the amount of money I've spent out on jiu-jitsu to get good at it, I'm still at a loss. You know, so now for the younger guys, like for Riley, for example, he might be able to get to my, you know, my status in the next few years, but without spending anywhere near the amount of money, because he can compete on Grapplefest, Polaris, and all these shows in the UK who might just cover his expenses. But man, well, I couldn't even get my expenses covered when I was, you know, going to compete to try and make a name for myself originally. So that I think that the route to pro grappling is definitely much easier now than it used to be. You know, like I said, like when I first got offered to EBI, it still cost me like £1,000 to go. You know, just go compete in EBI, you know, and I was competing on a pro show. So, but it's just what you've got to do as an athlete. So when I do get paid good money, or relatively good money to compete, I'm always like, oh, that's really cool. But obviously, I kind of feel like I'm paying off my own debt of what I invested in myself.
Trying to sort of cut your losses a little bit. And it's like goes back to, like, was it Braulio as a blue belt trying to get some money to go across to compete in the Pans and all this kind of stuff. It's the platform and how it's growing as a whole.
Yeah.
Ash, my friend, thank you so much for your time. I'm cautious of everyone keeping on a Sunday evening. Where can people find you on the old social media?
Instagram's the best place. I haven't been updating lately because of lockdown, and obviously I don't want to break protocols. But A Williams BJJ is where I update all my training stuff, and with the ADCC training camp coming up that I'm doing towards the ADCC trials, I'll be updating a lot now to show everyone what I'm doing, and hopefully why the way I'm training is going to make the difference. So I'm looking forward to it.
Fantastic. Thank you for your time, my friend. And Shane and Riley, where can people find you?
Shane Curtis BJJ on Instagram, and just Shane Oliver Curtis on Facebook.
Big Riley.
Instagram, Riley Matt Dan, and my other account at BTech Raptors. Please follow it.
Fantastic.